Before I introduce Virginia, let me tell you how I came to know her. Some months ago, my youngest son, Eris, who's a rabbi in Los Angeles, California, shared with me a conversation, and he said, "There is a book that I just read, and it's called My On My Watch. And it's written by Virginia Buckingham and is a memoir. And she was the former head of Logan's Boston Airport during 9/11, September, of course, September 11th. And no commentary necessary. Now, I read lots of books, and I could read five or six simultaneously, but I never read a book at one sitting. Never. And I got a hold of the book, and I began reading this book. And every other book that was on my desk or my night table, I pushed away. And I read this book at one sitting because there was so much wisdom and so much intelligence and so much hope and optimism and even goodness and candor in this book. And so before I even begin, I urge you during this time of the high holiday period, if you're looking to be inspired and uplifted, and it's not a story just about 9/11, it's a story about life and how we face life's challenges. And so, Virginia, I hope I didn't take the wind out of your sails, but it's really good to see you, uh, virtually, in person. And so, why don't you share with us the narrative that sort of pushed you in this direction of a book on my watch, not that you wanted to write, but a book that needed to be written and to be read, especially this year, as we are coming to the 20th anniversary and days of 9/11. Virginia, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I'm so grateful to join you this evening and that you invited me to share my story with your congregation. On this 20th anniversary, I know we are all holding the families who have lost so much over these past 20 years, so many memories and times, and holding their loved ones in our hearts and in our minds. I've often been asked, how am I measuring those 20 years? How do you measure 20 years of grief, 20 years of rebuilding, 20 years of some cruelties, 20 years of kindnesses, 20 years of loss, and 20 years of healing? And I do so first and foremost through my two children, one of whom was in utero on the morning of 9/11 and whom has just gone off to college for the first time, and my son, who was 2 and just graduated from college. So I measure it through the hopefulness of their lives for certain. I guess I could joke that I also measure it through the wrinkles on my face and the gray in my hair that probably weren't there 20 years ago. However, the scars that I bear from that day and the days following were invisible until I chose to make them visible with this book. And I did so in the hopes that my story of rebuilding can help others who are going through their own painful journeys. My book, On My Watch, as the rabbi said, was released last April. And it, of course, does talk about and share those tumultuous days of leading Logan after 2 planes were hijacked that morning on that beautiful cerulean blue day sky. It also, more importantly, talks about the rebuilding of my broken life and therefore, I hope offers a guide to rebuilding other broken lives. But first, like all of our stories, my story starts before that, which I also share in On My Watch, in my family, and in my faith. I grew up in rural Connecticut. I was seventh of 8 kids, youngest girl. My dad was a hardworking blue collar milkman and bread delivery guy. My mom, a hospital clerk. And I was raised to work hard, to listen to my parents, to be the best person I could be in this world. I was raised as a person of faith in the Catholic tradition. And following my father's hardworking example, I went to Boston College, came to Boston, and worked as hard as I could to succeed there, and had to get an internship that paid money because I was putting myself through college, and ended up in the State House in Boston. And for those of you who enjoy politics or endure politics, if you're interested in politics, Boston is the place to be. I was not a political person, nor was my family growing up, but I quickly got bit by the bug. And just loved being part of that world where you could make an impact and change things. I'd say a prayer every morning as I was driving to work. That God, please help me to remember that nothing is going to happen to me today that you and I together can't handle. I believed that God would intervene if I needed him. I was as sure of that as I am sure of the ground I stand on. So along the way, in that State House, on the second floor hallway, I met a boy who didn't believe what I believed. He wasn't raised as I was raised. He was Jewish, the oldest son, whose father escaped at 4 years old with his family from the Holocaust, but after losing many, many others. My husband, David, revered his culture and its history. We became best friends. We fell in love. He said I was his bashert, his destiny. When we got married by a judge under a huppah, in a ceremony I wrote myself, blending our traditions, David broke a glass wrapped in a family heirloom cloth. The judge spoke about its meaning, something I had researched in writing the ceremony. The fragility of the glass, I wrote, reminds us of the fragility of life. But in truth, at age 27, when I got married, I didn't know much about the fragility of life then. Not really. My love for my husband and our infant son was complete, and it was uncomplicated. My sleep was undisturbed by bad dreams. My career, my life seemed limitless. I know all of you listening this evening have your own 9/11 stories. You know where you were. You know who you called when you first saw those absolutely horrific images of the towers on fire. Some of you perhaps lost people you knew or you loved. Those stories bring us together still, even 20 years later. They're our shared history. Except that feeling of unity, of 9/11 unity, is not my story. I was in the car driving to Logan Airport to my office, and then later that morning flying to DC to work on a huge priority of the airport, which was to build a new runway, when I heard on the radio about the report of the first plane. And I thought it was a lost pilot, an accident, like so many people thought. And I was listening live when a report came from the ground there of the second plane striking the second tower, and I knew right away that was no accident. And it wasn't very many minutes later that I received a call from my office at Logan saying 6 words, which changed the world and changed my life forever. 2 planes are off the radar. Our job at that point was clear. We needed to close down the airport, secure all of the planes, clear the passengers from the terminals who were waiting to fly out, account for every single plane that had left Logan. We weren't able to confirm that the two planes that struck the towers were from Logan for several hours, but we did know that we were missing two planes. We opened a family assistance center so that families who couldn't reach their loved ones could come to the airport and seek whatever care or comfort we could provide, whatever information we could provide. We opened an emergency assistance center and brought in public safety professionals from all over the area who had trained with us year after year after year to respond to an aircraft emergency, as all airports do, except this was something that none of us could have prepared for. I'm going to read a little section from chapter 3 of my book at this point, because it was about mid-morning, 10:30, 11, when I got a call from my mom, who still lived in Connecticut. My assistant, Julie, said my mother was on the phone. I picked up. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm okay," I answered. I wished I could have said in response, "The towers, Mom, the towers are gone. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people are dead. Oh my God, Mom, the planes came from Logan." But I couldn't, even then, change the dynamic of a family relationship in which I was always the good one, the successful one, the okay one. A devout Catholic, my mom in turn tried to comfort me with our shared faith. "God always has a reason," she said. "God would never stand by and let this happen," I snapped back, my voice rising. I paused a second to try to speak more calmly. I refuse to believe in that kind of God. The all-powerful God she raised me to believe in opens a window when a door closes. He answers prayers, works miracles. How could he stand by and let hijackers murder thousands of innocent people? Barely concealing my rising fury, at her, at God, maybe at both, I said shortly, "I can't talk about this now. I have to go. I'll call you later." Neither she nor I knew then that a major foundation of my life, my belief in God, had shifted. A faith that had been as tangible and present as the ground I stood on, solid and unmoving, was gone. Destroyed in a matter of hours, as completely and as unimaginably as the Twin Towers. After that day, it only took 2 days for the first story to appear in the Boston Globe, suggesting I might be fired in response to the hijackings. The media frenzy grew. Talk radio, editorials, front page stories, TV cameras showing up at my door, political leaders in Massachusetts suggesting perhaps there was a problem unique to Logan Airport that caused the hijackings to occur. I met with the governor at the time in her office, and she said, "I know there was nothing you could do about this. I know Massport couldn't have stopped it. Massport was the name of the authority that ran Logan. But I also know you know how politics works and how the media works, so I can sleep at night." I was taken aback by the raw cynicism of those comments, despite having worked in the governor's office for many, many years. But I said simply, "I'm focused on doing my job." Within 6 weeks, it became very clear that the governor was going to fire me if I didn't resign. So I did, saying the words to a packed room of reporters that the events of 9/11 would be in my heart and in my soul forever, not really understanding the import of what that meant. Yes, my career was shattered, a career that I took great pride in. But it wasn't until about a year and a half after that, when a 9/11 family sued me personally for wrongful death, one of only 2 people in the entire country sued personally, that not only my career, my sense of self, but really my heart and my soul were shattered. The journey from there is the heart of On My Watch. It's about how I tried to understand why I was blamed, how I came to understand why scapegoating is so common in our culture, because that's how we address fear and anger, and how it's such a flawed way of leadership and of being citizens in the world around us. I came to understand how blaming lets us avoid the truth of the fragility of our lives, and how the world is a dangerous place, and how there is no such thing as perfect safety. I also share in On My Watch my experience that personal resilience is a far less perfect resolution than our popular cultural directive that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That is not my experience. I've learned that brokenness and beauty can exist side by side, and that is true resilience. I'll close this part of the conversation by reading another part of On My Watch that deals with wrestling, as I have for many years, with my relationship with God. It's from chapter 18, and the title is Maybe God Cried Too. This is November of 2003. I was here in a synagogue. I'd hardly set foot in any house of worship since 9/11, never mind a temple. And I'd never been to a bar mitzvah. Yet unexpectedly, the surroundings felt comfortable, familiar. The cantor began to sing. I closed my eyes and let the music wash over me, wondering if it would mean anything. Not only because the language was foreign, but because music, just like prayer, had ceased being a way to God for me. My mother had been the soloist in our parish church, her rich soprano a central part of the congregation's worship. While it had embarrassed my teenage sensibilities to see her standing behind the lectern each Sunday morning, it also taught me to pray through music. Turn to me. Here I am, Lord. Be not afraid. Sometimes, through those favorite hymns, I felt God was speaking directly to me, telling me he would be there if I needed him. As the unfamiliar music and Hebrew chanting filled the sanctuary, I thought back to a recent session with my therapist, Andrea. She had uncharacteristically asked me about my relationship with God. I wouldn't typically talk about religion, she said, but I have a gut feeling that the way you'll get back to yourself is through God. I was surprised by the comment, although I had once described to her the many times I would sit in the chapel at Boston College as a young student and think I felt God's presence. Go home tonight and write God a letter, she urged. Just see what might come of it. Our friend's son, Jordan, took his place next to the rabbi as the Torah was placed in front of him. I continued to reflect. On the ride home from the appointment with Andrea, I thought about her suggestion. There was a chill in the damp air. A light rain had begun falling. I realized I was shaking, not with cold, but with anger. The feeling made me uneasy. Who was I to be angry at God? In the sanctuary, David squeezed my hand and said he was getting up to help his father, Marvin, who suffered from Parkinson's disease, join the rabbi and do an honorary prayer called an Aliyah. I nodded, still lost in thought. Where was God on 9/11? I asked myself, maneuvering through the traffic as I neared home. Did he just stand by and watch as the hijackers boarded the planes? It started to rain harder. I turned the windshield wipers to the next setting. My fury seemed to rise in concert with their increased tempo. Did he choose to do nothing while the pilots' throats were slashed, while people jumped from the towers rather than burned to death? With a bitter shake of my head, I knew exactly what I would write in my letter. 4 words. My response to the falsehood, turn to me and be saved. My answer to the lies, be not afraid, and that he'd carry me on eagle's wings. No, he will not. I wanted to scream it out loud. David sat back down next to me and drew my attention back to the front of the temple. Jordan looks great, he whispered as our friend's son began to read his Torah portion from the altar. I knew that wasn't right, but I didn't know what to call it. When Jordan finished, the rabbi stepped down from the bimah. That's what David said the raised platform was called, in a whispered answer to my question, and began telling the congregation the story of God destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham challenged God, he said. He urged God to stop. The rabbi moved towards the group of Jordan's Hebrew school classmates. What do you think Abraham is doing? A student ventured an answer, and then the rabbi provided his. Perhaps, he said, Abraham was trying to teach God. Perhaps we not only learn from God, but also God learns from us. The rabbi suggested God is evolving. Abraham is trying to teach God that if he's looking for perfection, for justice, he'll never find it in flawed human beings. He'll never find it on earth. I looked up at the pitched roof above me, the wooden cross beams providing an illusion of support, and then glanced at the stained glass window behind the bimah, so reminiscent of a church. David could sense my disquiet, and he leaned over. Are you all right? He asked. I might be, I answered, and finished the thought silently. I might be, if this turns out to be true. On 9/11, maybe God cried too. Thank you again for letting me share that story with you all, and I look forward to the conversation with Rabbi Sherman.
Yeah, all I could say, Virginia, is that, in particular, that story touched me in a very, very personal, in a very, very special way. That all of us who have challenges in life, sometime or another, ask that question: where is God? And why did God let this happen? And if you allow me, in Jewish tradition over the holidays, there is an interesting source that we quote from the book of Deuteronomy that says that those things that are revealed belong to human beings, and those things that are hidden remain with God. And sometimes, at least the way I deal with it, I don't know. Even being a person of faith, it's accepting there are certain things in life I will go to my grave not understanding. Uh, I want to ask you, I guess the question is that were there moments after 9/11, as we speak about God, we saw bad stuff. Were there moments that you witnessed the goodness of God? And, is there a story, an anecdote that says to you, yeah, with all the pain, there is goodness here?
Yes, and going back to my husband's and my difference in faith, one of the things he used to say back in the day was he believed God was the collective goodness of human beings. And while that wasn't what I was raised to believe, it is what I saw in the compassion and kindness that was shown to me over the years. Specifically, a 9/11 family who lost their daughter, their only daughter, on United 175, has been one of my bulwarks of support. I reached out to this mom. Her name is Anne McFarlane, kind of a salty Irish Boston lady, and met with her about a year after 9/11 to ask her the question that haunted me and haunted my dreams, which is, do you blame me for the murder of your daughter? And without hesitating for a second, she said, you're no more to blame than Marianne is. What are you going to do with your life now? And I answered, try to find myself, write my story, move ahead. And she said, do it in my daughter Marianne's name. And we have stayed close and in close contact. And she's just one of many, often strangers, whose kindness held me up and kept me going. And in that, maybe David's right. Maybe there is God in the collective goodness of human beings.
And it's interesting. Someone who lives in your neighborhood, you live in Marblehead, correct? That a colleague and a good friend, Harold Kushner, who wrote the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People. I remember asking him, the title is all wrong. It should be why. And he once said to me, he can't answer why, but there always will be a when. And his approach is that is looking at the goodness of people who've come forth when we all engage in some really terrible, terrible personal tragedies or really challenges. Let me walk back. When 9/11 took place, you are a woman with an infant, I believe a young son, expecting, we now know, a daughter who I believe is going to be a freshman already at the University of Virginia. Uh, and I believe your son asked you, I don't remember it was, a question that is like, wow. He says, Mom, why did you leave your job after 9/11? And as you just shared with us, you resigned, but you knew you had to resign. Yeah, what do you say to a kid like that when he says, Mom, why did you leave your job after 9/11? What does it say about you?
So he was 6 when he asked that question, and 2 when I was working at Logan. And he remembered it because I would take him in, and the firefighters at Logan would let him ride in the seat of the truck and spray their hoses. So he loved that I worked there with a little boy with trucks and planes and fire trucks. So what more could be better? I tried to answer him simply, as I was trying to understand it myself. And so I said simply, in simple language, some bad guys took some planes and people were mad at me. And he's, like, why would people be mad at you? And why would people take planes? Why would they steal planes? And I tried to say, we love you. You know how you love everyone. Some people don't love everyone. And they took planes to hurt people. And sometimes people get afraid and scared, and then they get mad, sometimes at the wrong person. And that's why I had to leave my job.
And let me follow up in terms really, I guess if it, of your family and your personal life. And this sort of, I guess, transcends the entire 9/11 trauma and experience. How do you build or how do you rebuild your personal family while still going through this terrible grief and this horrific trauma? Are there parallel paths or divergent paths? I mean, how do you do it?
So for me, and it's not everyone's story, first and foremost, I was a mom. And so I had to make a choice very early on. Did my children deserve to have a broken mother who could not mother them? And I came close to not being there. I came close to not being able to bear the trauma and the pain of being blamed for killing all those people. But I went to my son's bedside, literally, and while he was asleep, promised him that I would stay and that I would be the best mom that I could possibly be. So, first and foremost, whether it's children or siblings or your own parents, knowing that you matter to them and being there and holding on is kind of the fundamental part of life, those loving relationships. I had a very adoring, supportive husband who totally did not get what I was going through, which he fully would admit today, because he just wanted me to be better. He wanted me to be the same person I always was, which is the successful, strong, hardworking Ginny Buckingham who went through this bad thing. Yes, but she's better for it because, she learned so much from it. She's wiser. And, that took a lot of years of talking and fighting and hugging and crying and coming to a place where he completely understands now, and I completely understand that he was trying the best he could to support me. So family and loved ones. And finally, I'd say hold on to what you know is true inside, whatever you're going through. Even though I felt blamed for a long time, I felt guilty. Deep, deep, deep down inside, I knew I wasn't. And it took me a long time to hear that voice again. And once I finally did, that told me I could make it. I would be able to thrive.
And let me follow up on that, because part of the narrative, and to call it a narrative really is talking about literature, but part of your life experience, it deals with blame and forgiveness, which is really the part of the message of what we as Jews engage tonight and over the next couple of weeks with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That you've heard, I think, from Eris, our son, and you certainly know the Bible, is the story in the book of Leviticus, and it's going to be one of the biblical readings that we have, where the Israelites send a scapegoat out into the desert to be sort of an expiation, really, and to take all their guilt and their sins away. And I want to read something that you wrote in the book, and I asked you to comment on it. It says, I think it says, sometimes you write, when people are scared, they get mad. Instead of what makes them scared, they blame someone for making them feel that way. What do you mean by that?
So I think in our politics, yes, but also in our culture, that it's a human reflex to try to find an answer that makes you feel less vulnerable. And in the case of me heading Logan Airport, it made people, the media and politicians and the public, feel safer if the reason we were attacked so easily by terrorists was because I was a political appointee at the head of the airport. It's wrong thinking. It doesn't solve any problems, but it's extremely common. And I feel like we see it every day, even today, given COVID and the pandemic, what we just went through. I think everyone should reflect, how many times a day do we blame somebody for, not doing the right thing, or not doing it fast enough, or not understanding it well enough, or, just a million places that we try to put blame so that we feel safer from what has just occurred. And I hope through my book that there's some recognition of how wrongheaded that way of approaching life is. And I'll just add to your scapegoating story about the literal goat being sent out of the village. I recently met with someone I worked with at Massport and was very close to after he read my book. And he said, no one else felt the way you did at Logan. I'm sure there are gradations of that reality, but it was a very isolating comment to hear until I reflected and understood, well, of course they didn't, because I was the scapegoat. No one else had to feel the way I felt because I was the one blamed and the one sent out of the village.
And I want to move where in terms of blame. Did you recognize? Well, you said early on you knew that you were going to be that scapegoat. And what was the journey like? I mean, who did you talk to? Besides, obviously you talked about a therapist, and what do you do to sort of really wash that terrible label away?
So I realized it pretty early on while I was still working at Logan, because the media coverage was just over the top. in terms of the viciousness of the blame. And I ignored it as best I could because I had a job to do and I wanted my team to stay focused on their job. So I think as a leader in those times of crisis, that's job one. Put the noise aside and do your job and lead your team. That's what I did. When I left Logan, I was completely flattened by the experience. I was pregnant, so I had my daughter. My first instinct, because I was a career person, was to get a new job. Right, so I was like, okay, I'm going to rebuild by getting a new job and a new career. So I had always wanted to be a writer, so I pitched myself to those very same newspapers that excoriated me, which people would say was a little backwards, but I didn't have a lot of choices, and I wanted to be a writer. I got hired by one of them, so that was a step. But I still didn't feel like myself. I still had lost that sense of self that had been taken away. And it was a slow, long road. And I felt and feel sometimes a lot of shame about the long road that it took me so long to start listening to my inner voice and to be my own hero and to say, no, there was nothing I could have done to stop what happened that day and do some good with something bad, which is the point of my book, to try to share my story of rebuilding for others. And it took what it took. I guess that's what I would say. It took a long time. I'd say a good 15 years before I started to regain my footing as a human being.
Now, it's interesting. You have a chapter which I can found to be compelling, where it's called "We Share," I believe, a pain, and you talk about a guy by the name of Michael Tui. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and in it you say, I quote, "There is never a day without thinking about that day. There's never a day without thinking about that day." And can you share with us a little, for those who haven't, who are not familiar with the story, about Michael Tui, and what did you learn from this guy?
So my mom had read in Yankee Magazine, I don't know if that's around in Pennsylvania, but it's a big thing in New England, a story about a man in Maine. And the headline in the magazine was, "Why is this Maine man haunted by 9/11?" And it was about Michael Tui, who was the gate agent at Portland Airport, where Muhammad Atta, who was the lead hijacker, and one other terrorist had boarded a plane and flown to Logan to then get on another plane to the West Coast, which ultimately went into the towers. And he felt tremendous guilt about knowing this something was off with this guy, and he described it, looking at evil itself, looking into Muhammad Atta's eyes. Yet there was nothing he could do about it. If he had said, "You can't get on a plane," he would have been fired, most likely, for profiling, and instead said words that haunt him: "Mr. Atta, if you don't hurry, you're going to miss your flight." So I read about this story and I felt so pained for him, and I really wanted to find him. So I reached out through some media to try to find him. And then, the most simplest of ways, I called the phone book, called 411 and found him and left him a message on his answering machine. I said, "You may not know my name. This is who I am. This is why I'm calling you. Just wanted to tell you, you are not to blame." And he called me back and we talked for over an hour, kind of nonstop, trading back and forth our stories of how we felt. And it was a gift. It was such a gift to share a pain with someone. And that's what he said at the end when I said, "Michael, I don't know if we'll ever talk again, but thank you so much." And he said, "Well, Virginia, we share a pain." And I think what I learned from that, not only the critical importance of trying to reach out to others who have similar or totally different experiences, but others who know pain, it makes you feel less isolated and it just helps move you forward. But also, like Michael Tui, who I still see on the media, around the anniversaries, we carry it with us. And that idea that you slam the door on the past and you move on and you put it all behind you and just go on, it just isn't true. It's just not how it works. You carry your pain and your joy with you. if you're a full human being and allow yourself to experience both.
It's interesting you said that. I once wrote something, and I said, those people who try and make you feel better, they said you need to move forward. And my response to that is that I can't move forward with certain things. The best I can do is go on. And having said that, to me, you have a story, and it's a simple story, but it's a beautiful story. I found it unbelievably uplifting. Where you talk about forgiveness and forgiveness of self, and you use the metaphor, and there's an image of that of a trampoline. And can you share that with us or elaborate on it?
So there's an incredible book, if folks are interested, called When the Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van Kolk, I believe is the author, which I found late in my journey. And it's really about how your body synthesizes trauma, and how to help yourself in that understanding. But he tells a story early on, which really struck me, about a family in Manhattan who lived in southern Manhattan and who had just dropped their youngest 5-year-old boy off at school, because that, if some might remember, was the first day of school in Manhattan, 9/11. And the little boy was there to see the towers struck. He was there fleeing with his father to try to get away. He saw bodies falling. He's 5 years old. Later, this author, who's again friendly with the family, was visiting with them, and he talked about how they were doing well, and he attributed part of that in that they were able to save themselves by fleeing, and that kind of gave them some strength to build from. But then he saw this picture that this little boy had drawn, of that day, and it was the two towers, and they were burning, and there were bodies falling, and there was this little circular thing at the bottom of one of the towers, little dark circle. And the doctor said, Naum, I believe his name was Naum, what is that? And he said, it's a trampoline. So if this happens again, people can save themselves by landing on the trampoline. And what a beautiful image, what a beautiful thought, what a kind, compassionate human being that little boy is. And it made me realize I needed to find my own trampoline, figuratively. Metaphorically, I needed to try to save myself. And part of that is forgiveness. And what I struggled with for many years of guilt was, why didn't I know? Why didn't I focus on that? True, Massport was not in charge of the checkpoints. Under law, they were run by the airlines. I get that, but I'm smart. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I do something? Why didn't I know what I didn't know? And ultimately, that's what I had to forgive myself for, that I did not know what I did not know. And I do forgive myself for that, because I couldn't have known.
It's interesting, Jenny, that you say that, because a lot of people will come to synagogue over these high holidays, either in person or virtually, and people think that the high holidays are really about God forgiving us. And I have a very different twist on it, sort of similar to what you have. Yeah, that's true. But I think a large part of that experience is sitting there in a sacred community, in reflection, and having the ability to forgive yourself. And that's a real gift if you're able to walk out of that community or wherever you are and have that sense of cleansing there. And the other thing I just want to mention, again, you have another beautiful imagery, and I quote: "It says a thread in the tapestry of my life." What do you mean by that? A thread in the tapestry of my life.
Early on in my struggle and in my journey, I was seeing a grief counselor, Andrea, And she said that to me. She said, someday 9/11 will be a thread in the tapestry of your life. And I was like, what? That's not possible. 9/11 is all of my life. It is who I am now. It is what has happened. It defines me forever. And I now, 20 years in, see what she means. Not that it's not a huge part of who I am and my story and what I'm sharing, but it's not everything. It's not my whole self. It's not my whole heart. It's not my whole soul. And that can happen. It can happen with time and compassion and self grace.
And people know my own personal narrative. We had lost a son a couple of years ago, and I understand that it took some distance to get some kind of clarity and coherence that it hurts every day of my life. However, uh, it's an important thread in the tapestry of my total life, and you can't real you got to hold on to the entire tapestry, and just that obviously that piece. I have so many things I want to ask you. We have limited time this evening. Just maybe just two or three. Is that you write this? You said changing our lives will be the greatest gift that we can give the departed. They surely expect more from us than to merely memorialize their names. I'm going to throw it back at you. How have you, in these last 20 years, changed your life? How has your life changed since 9/11, based upon what you wrote? Changing our lives would be the greatest gift that we can give to the departed. They surely expect more from us than merely to memorialize their names.
So that came from a speech that was given at the dedication of the Logan Airport Memorial, which is quite lovely, quite beautiful. If you're ever flying through Logan and have some time, it's right near the Hilton Hotel. And the speech maker talked about how the very first memorials to 9/11 were actually at Logan Airport, and they were in the form of an American flag that the airline workers had put at the ends of the jetways at both gates where the two airlines depart. And if you fly into Logan today, they're still there, those American flags on those two jetways. And I look for them every single time that I land at Logan to pay them respect. And I have realized what the speaker was saying, to do more than that, to do more than once a year on September 11th, to pause and honor, as we all will, that I had to do something with my story. And the first way I've changed, I think, is I am conscious now about the fragility of life. And I try very incompletely and erroneously to live that way, to be embracing of that notion and what it might mean for being a person of purpose. I very much try to pay forward the compassion and kindness that has been shown to me when I can, and try to be a force for good in the world. I'm more aware. I guess that's the biggest change. Is I was living a good life and I was a good person and I was working hard and I had a good family, but I wasn't living an aware life. And I'm trying to do that now.
I'm just curious. I think, I don't know if I read about it or saw it in a conversation about it. I think your children have had a bar mitzvah and a bat mitzvah, I believe.
Mhm.
And I think one of them you spoke. And do you remember what you said to them that day?
I spoke to each of them and told the story to Jack at his bar mitzvah, how when he was a little boy and we were driving by the ocean, and the ocean is one of my greatest joys, but it also is where I considered ending my life. That as we were driving by, he said at 4 years old, "Mommy, I love you deeper than any ocean. I love you more than there is sand on the beach. I love you more than there are shells on the beach." And then, as if he knew I somehow needed to hold on to that, he said, "Mommy, everything I'm telling you is true." And I told that story because his love held me up for so many years. And then at my daughter's bat mitzvah, one of the painful moments right at Logan after 9/11 was listening to the song Proud to Be an American, which we had sung in one of the hangars at a memorial service. And everyone was being brought together, yet I felt so isolated and sad. And one day, my daughter was probably 18 months old, maybe two. The song came on during some sporting event, and I immediately had that like darkness, that dark dagger feeling in my heart. And my little girl said, "Mama, Mama, let's dance. Mama, let's dance." And I picked her up and I had tears running down my face, but I danced with her in the kitchen to the very song that had made me feel so sad. And I realized that that's part of how healing happens, that memories can move over and make room for a new memory, that you carry both joy and brokenness.
I mean, really wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thought. And let me ask you, a couple of days, it's going to be 9/11, 20th anniversary. What are you doing that day, and where are you going to be?
So I don't know yet. I take it by air, play it by air every year. Usually there's a small little service in my hometown in the Veterans Memorial area where there's speakers and prayers, and I often go to that and just watch. I am doing another conversation um, with someone about my book at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts later that day. Mostly I try to just be with my family. Often I try to go sit by the ocean and just find peace.
And you spoke about really in your book, and really, I keep saying one more two questions. I keep moving on. Is that what is the message you can share with us on the eve of 9/11? And again, which is the slichot. You know, how do you get to that moment in your life where you can look towards what we call shalom, peace, harmony, reconciliation? Look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a good person.
So, in my book, I talk about the Boston Marathon bombings, which occurred in 2013. And those grievous attacks were so horrific for so many families and runners, and just struck the heart of Boston. On a personal level, it made me feel even more isolated because everyone came together at that time to support one another, which was not my experience. So, luckily, I had our temple in Marblehead, where we belong, and our rabbi is an avid runner and marathoner. And I went to services that week of the marathon attacks, and he said a prayer for healing that I still keep in my heart every single day. And I offer it. I'm sure you know it. I'm sure your congregation knows it as something to hold on to. Um, and yes, it's may the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say, Amen. I continue to try to find the courage. Every day try to find the courage to make my life a blessing. And I'm so grateful you let me share that story with you, share my story with you.
And you talk about community. We say that prayer every single time we really are together. And as you said, really a prayer of healing, not just a physical healing, but really of emotional healing, and compels us to see the world differently. Okay, we say really in our tradition, Acharon, Acharon Chaviv. This is, Virginia, the last question. Okay? And is there something in your book or your life story experience that you keep returning to that you think offers us some measure of hope, some measure of optimism and confidence as we in the Jewish community uh, are about to begin a new year?
So in our temple, we walk to the sea to do the throwing. You have to tell me what that is called. Throw,
Tashlik.
like tashlik.
Tashlik.
So
You're good. You're good.
we throw bread, not stones, into the water so the seagulls can have it. Um,
Yeah.
and in my book, I talk a lot about the sea and about my metaphor for resilience, which is sea glass. And to me, that is a more apt way of thinking about how you can feel resilient as you face life's trials. You know, a piece of glass, a bottle that's thrown into the sea and is thrown about in the waves and the salt and the sand for 20, 30, 50 years, however long, and ends up on the sand, not at all looking like what it was, given all the trials that it has gone through, but still incredibly valuable, beautiful, capable of giving joy in meaning. And to me, that sea glass is the kind of resilience we can strive for, hold on to, and embrace.
Before we say goodbye to each other this evening, I just want to remind everybody is that not if you're looking, but urge you to get a hold of this book, On My Watch, a Memoir. Read it during this time of the year. We have several weeks beginning tonight with Slichot through the high holiday season. It is a perfect read. Share it with family and friends. It is compelling. You will learn so much about not just Virginia's life and 9/11, but you'll learn so much more about your life. And so helpful in terms of reaching our own dreams and learning to live with some of our own challenges. I want to thank you for writing this book. We're going to be taking a brief hapsakah, a recess, if you may. In about a half hour, we will rejoin together in person and virtually for our Slichot service. It begins at 9:45. If you're participating virtually, it's on our MBIE virtual platforms. It's a beautiful service. The music of the high holidays with our wonderful cantor Friedman. And this year, as last year, I'm thrilled that we have a celebrated pianist to join Cantor Friedman with beautiful, beautiful, beautiful music. And Jenny, what I want to do is end with a prayer. It really was a popular song. It started out. And we've introduced it as part of our Slicho liturgy, which I think is part of the message you shared with us, but the message of life in these high holidays. It's called Al Ko'ela. In Hebrew, it says Al Hadvash, V'Al Ha'oketz, Al Hamar, V'Hamatok. It says through the pain and through the pleasure, through the peaceful and through the wild, our tiny, fragile treasure, God protect that child. May our homes be safe from terror. May our children know no pain. Guard the earth from nature's error and give it sun and give it rain. So you, I wish you, as I wish everybody, Shana Tova, a good year, a healthy year, a safe year, and a sweet year. We'll see everybody at 9:45 this evening. Jenny, thanks a lot, okay? And I look forward to meeting you in person one of these
Yeah,
days.
me too.
Real, real, real soon, okay? Regards to your family. Kol tu, Shana Tova. Thank you.
Okay. Want to tell them? Ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome everybody this Saturday evening of Slichot for our Slichot service. Again, those who are watching with our community virtually, we say Baruchim Habayim, we welcome you. And to those in our in-person congregation, of course, we say likewise Baruchim Habayim and a Shavua Tov and a good year. We begin our Slichot service this evening with a special reading. Ribbono Shel Olam, I hereby forgive anyone who may have irritated, angered, or injured me, whether acting against my person, my possessions, or my reputation. Let no person be punished on my account, whether the wrong done me was accidental or malicious, unwitting or purposeful, by word or by deed. May it be your will that I not repeat the wrongs I've committed and that I sin no more. May I never again anger you by doing that which is evil in your sight. I pray that you will wipe away my sins and the sins of the whole household of Israel, not through sickness and suffering, but with great mercy.
Lie, 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 lie,
Ashrei.
Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yehalelu Chaselo Ashrei Ham Shekochalo Ashrei Ham She'adonai Elohav Tehillah LeDavid Aromimcha Elohai HaMelech Va'avarcha Shimcha Le'olam Va'ed
Lechoyim avarchecha v'lashimecha le'olam v'ohed.
Gadol Adonai Mehulal Me'od V'ligdulato Ein Cheker
Odoi shabach ma'asecha v'rotecha yagidu.
Hadar Kevod Hodecha V'divrei Niflaotecha Asicha
Zuz noratecha yomeru udolacha asaparena.
Zecher Av Tuvcha Yabi'u V'tzidkatcha Yiranenu
Anu v'rachum Adonai erech apayim dochoseh.
Tov Adonai Lakol V'rachamav Al Kol Ma'asav
Yoducha likol ma'asecha v'chasidecha yivarechucha.
Kevod Malchutcha Yomeru Ugevuratcha Yedaberu
Odil v'nei Adam v'vrotav v'varadar malchuto.
Malchutcha Malchut Kol Olamim Umemshaltecha B'chol Dor Vador
Shomei chanenoch hanoflim v'zokep l'chol hafufim.
עיני כל אליך יסברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעיתו.
היכד ידיך, ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
רוב הרי לכל קרוב, לך שגרו ואמת.
רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שומר נקבב, ואת קשיים ישמיד. תהילת
אדוני ידבר פי, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד. ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם.
We rise, please, for the Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבו בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכו בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב וימרו אמן. יהי שמי רבם מברך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא דאמירן בעלמא ויאמרו amen.
If you'll please be seated. During the last week or so, we distributed these lovely Sefarim, these lovely books to our community. And if you have such a book, you will find the reading and introspection on page 4. This is the hour of midnight, the most fragile time. Midnight belongs to neither yesterday nor tomorrow. It stands apart, separate from the day that was and from the day that will be. It is like an instant between two eternities, and we are at this instant suspended between our yesterdays and our tomorrows. Behind us are our memories and what we have said. Before us is the unknown of the future, what we shall be, how we shall live. History is stopped for a moment this night so that we may gather our thoughts. Soon we will usher in a new year. What will it bring to us? How shall we live? How can we prepare to meet its challenges and opportunities, its trials and its struggles? Now is the time for turning. The leaves are beginning to turn from green to red to orange. The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more toward the south. The animals are beginning to turn to storing their food for the winter. For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. But for us, turning does not come so easily. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits. It means admitting that we have been wrong, and this is never easy. It means losing face. It means starting over again, and this is always painful. It means saying, I'm sorry. It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are terribly hard to do, but unless we turn, we will be trapped forever in yesterday's ways. God, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith. Turn us around, God, and bring us back towards you. Revive our lives as at the beginning, and turn us toward each other, God, for in isolation there is no life. There's these little inserts in our prayer books. If you don't have it, you're probably familiar with the song, which really is a prayer. Turn, turn, turn.
To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven.
On page 5, we pray responsively Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, Lord.
Lord,
Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my cry
for mercy.
If you kept a record of sins, Lord, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness, so that we can with reverence
serve you.
I wait for the Lord, my whole being waits, and in his word I put my hope. I wait for the Lord, more than watchmen wait for the morning.
More than watchmen wait for the morning.
Israel, put your hope in the Lord, for with the Lord is unfailing love, and with him is full redemption.
He himself will redeem Israel from all their sins.
On the top of the page, the prayer, the soul is yours, the body is your creation. Have mercy on your handiwork.
Haneshama lach vehaguf polach chusa alamalach haneshama lach vehaguf polach chusa alamalach haneshama lach vehaguf polach chusa alamalach lai 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 lai.
On page 6, we introduce the 13 attributes of God in the middle of the page. You have taught us, Lord, to recite the words which you proclaimed to Moses, declaring your attributes of mercy. Remember in our favor your covenant of compassion, which you then revealed, that it is written in your Torah, the Lord descended in a cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name Lord. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim, Verav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon Va'fesha, V'chata'a v'nakei. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim, V'rav Chesed Ve'emet, Chesed la'alafim, Nosei avon va'fesha, v'chata'a v'nakei. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim, V'rav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed la'alafim, Nosei avon va'fesha, V'chata'a
Moses prayed, pardon our iniquity and our sin, claim us for your own, forgive us, our Father, for we have sinned. Pardon us, our King, for we have transgressed. You, O Lord, are generous and forgiving. Great is your love for all who call to you. We turn, please, to page 7. One of the centerpieces of a slichot service is this prayer. The refrain is Lishmo-El harina ve'el hatfilah. Hear our plea, accept our prayer. Lishmo-El harina ve'el hatfilah. The ark is opened. If you will please rise, if possible. B'motzei menucha kidanucha techila.
Lishmoa, Lishmoa, Lishmoa el harina, Lishmoa, Lishmoa ve'el hatefila, Lishmoa, Lishmoa, Lishmoa el harina, Lishmoa, Lishmoa ve'el hatefila. B'motzei menucha kidamnucha tchila hat oznecha hat oznecha Yoshev Tehillah. Lishmoa, Lishmoa, Lishmoa el harina, Lishmoa, Lishmoa ve'el hatefila, Lishmoa, Lishmoa, Lishmoa el harina, Lishmoa, Lishmoa ve'el hatefila.
Remember Isaac, bound for an offering, in whose stead the ram was slain. Shield his descendants, praying this night. Kindle your power, come to their aid. Hear our plea, accept our prayer. Lishmo-El harina ve'el hatfilah. Receive all who seek your presence. Let their plea reach your heavenly abode. Do not refuse to hear their prayers, the fervent prayers which they offer. Hear our plea, accept our prayer. Lishmo-El harina
ve'el hatfilah.
Trembling before you like a woman in travail, like a woman bringing forth her firstborn, they stand in awe before your wonders, before the wonder of your forgiveness. Hear our plea, accept our prayer. Lishmo-El harina
ve'el hatfilah.
You created every living being. Of old you rescued us from trouble. Bless us though we be not worthy. Grant us your gift of forgiveness. Hear our plea, accept our prayer. Lishmo-El harina
ve'el hatfilah.
Strengthen your people, O Lord, on high, though their transgressions are so many. Bless them from your heavenly treasure. Though undeserving, they plead before you. Hear our plea, accept our prayer. Lishmo-El harina
ve'el hatfilah.
Consider our suffering, not our sins. Vindicate those who plead before you. You who perform wonders, hear us. Lord God of hosts, heed our plea. Accept our prayer. Lishmo-El harina ve'el hatfilah.
Ritzei atiratam be'omedam עושה גדולות, לשמוע אל הרינה, לשמוע ואל התפילה, לשמוע אל הרינה, לשמוע ואל התפילה.
The ark is closed. If you'll please be seated. We turn, please, top of page 9, as we introduce the Shema Kolenu prayer. We ask God, please hear our voices. As an owl in the desert screams in the night, so I want to be heard, my God. As a thrush cries as danger nears its nest, so we plead that you attend us. Like the eagle that you created circles round and round, higher and higher, to protect its young, so guard us from danger. As a dove hovers constantly over its young, never tiring of its task, so let me be nestled in your care. Spread your wings, carry me, watch over me, bring me to your holy house on eagle's wings. The ark is opened again. We rise, please, Shema Kolenu. The tradition is the cantor chants the verse, and then we repeat that same verse. Page 9, Shema Kolenu.
Shema, Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus verachem aleinu, vekabel berachamim uveratzon et tefilateinu. Shema, Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus verachem aleinu, vekabel berachamim uveratzon et tefilateinu. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem, Al tashlichenu milfanecha, veruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu. Al tashlichenu le'et zi מקבל ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו.
The ark is closed. If you'll please be seated. If you have the prayer books that we distributed, there is an insert for a song entitled Bridge Over Troubled Water. I thought Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel was really a song about nostalgia and sort of took me back to a journey in my own, I guess, life history. But if you look at the lyrics, it's really a story about life and about the message of slichot. The last paragraph says this: sail on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. And oh, if you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will ease your mind. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will ease your mind. About 45 minutes ago or less, many of us were able to witness a conversation that I had with a very special lady, Virginia Buckingham. Those who saw it, pardon my, I guess the repetition, Virginia was the head of Boston Logan Airport at 9/11, at which time two of the planes that took off from Logan Airport on 9/11 were those two planes that crashed into the Twin Towers. And in her memoir, in an epilogue, this is what she writes. Again, it's not about 9/11. It's about where we find ourselves collectively and in person. She writes, to those who struggle, you're not alone. Your healing will come in its own time, at its own pace. But know and hold on to the idea that you are as resilient and as beautiful as sea glass, embracing the fragility and discovering meaning, joy, and beauty. The cantor, Bridge Over Troubled Water.
When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I'll dry them all. I'm on your side. Oh, when times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. Oh, if you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your mind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your mind.
On top of page 10, we introduce the vidui, the confessional. We join together. Eternal God, what can we say in your presence? How do we account for our sins? We speak of teshuvah, and yet are slow to change. But now we turn to you with the prayer that your love may abide with us always. Turn our hearts to your ways, our feet to your path. Hope is food and drink to us. Hope sustains us. And so we pray, do not turn us away empty-handed from your presence. End our darkness with your light,
and turn our passions to your purpose.
Help us, eternal God, in this hour of turning, to make real in our lives the words of our mouths
and the meditations of our hearts.
We rise, please, for the Ashamnu.
Ay, 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 Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Dofi, ay, 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 Hevinu, Vehirshanu, Zadnu, Chamasnu, Tafalnu, Shaker, ay, 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 Ya'atnu Ra, Kizavnu, Latnu, Maradnu, Niyatnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Tsararnu, Kishinu, Oref, ay, 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 Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Ta'inu, Titanu.
We join together. We abuse, we betray, we are cruel, we destroy, we embitter, we falsify, we gossip, we hate, we insult, we jeer, we kill, we lie, we mock, we neglect, we oppress, we pervert, we quarrel, we rebel. We steal, we transgress, we are unkind. We are violent, we are wicked, we are xenophobic. We yield to evil, we are zealots for bad causes. If you please be seated, we join or follow the cantor, the prayer, I'll call Eila through the pain and through the pleasure, through the peaceful and the wild. You'll see it on the insert, I'll call Eila.
ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על ביתנו התינוקת שמורי לי הטוב, על האש המבוערת, על המים הזכים, על האיש השב הביתה מן המרחקים, על כל peaceful and the wild, our tiny fragile treasure, God protect that child. May our homes be safe from terror, may our children know no pain, guard the earth from nature's error, give it sun and rain. Al kol Shomer Yisrael, Shemor She'erit Yisrael. Shomer Yisrael, Shemor She'erit Yisrael. Ve'al Yovad Yisrael, Ve'al Yovad Yisrael, Ha'omerim Shema Yisrael. Shomer Goy Echad, Shmor She'erit Am Echad. Shomer Goy Echad, Shmor She'erit Am Echad. Ve'al Yovad Goy Echad, Ve'al Yovad Goy Echad Ham Yachadim. Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shomer, Shomer, Goy Kadosh, Shmor She'erit Am Kadosh. Shomer, Shomer, Goy Kadosh, Shmor She'erit Am Kadosh. Ve'al Yovad, Goy Kadosh, Ve'al Yovad, Goy Kadosh, Hamshalshim, B'shilush, Kedushot leKadosh, Mitratze berachamim, Umitpayes betachanunim, Hitratze v'hitpayes, ledoroni, ki eino zer. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein bonu masim. Asei imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Asei imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein bonu masim. Yitgada v'yitkadash Shemei Rabba, Amen. Be'alma divrach irutei, v'yamich malchutei. B'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman karif, v'yimeru, v'yimeru, v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba mevarach, le'olam ul'olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishamach v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yithalal, shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol mirchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imeru. Amen. Titkabal tziloton uva'uton dechol Yisrael, kodam avuhon divishmaya v'imeru. Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, v'imeru, v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'meromav u'ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen.
Before we conclude our service, it's still, I think, this evening, with Yigdal, just a couple of announcements. Services tomorrow morning will be at 9 o'clock. It's our virtual Zoom minyan that is at 9 o'clock. This coming Friday, late afternoon, is our very, very early Kabbalat Shabbat, and our service conducted by Cantor Freeman. That will be at 4 o'clock. And Shabbat services will be both in person and on our Melrose virtual platforms, and that will be on Saturday morning at 9:15. Rosh Hashanah, which is Labor Day, will begin at 7 o'clock in the evening. There is an in-person service as well as, again, our Melrose social platforms, and throughout the holidays, we will be having in-person services as well, of course, our social platforms. Those who are part of our community, who want to be part of our community, we ask that you make arrangements. We have days to pick up machzorim. They will not be distributed during the service because of COVID, and therefore they will be picked up, and we ask that you bring with them here to the synagogue, as well if you wear a talit, that you bring a talit, and of course if you wear a kippah, that also you bring your own kippot because of COVID. I want to turn to our, he's not a compromised. He's become really a friend of our synagogue. This is Dave Schlossberg. Dave, it is wonderful really to have you with us with your wonderful, wonderful talents and really your understanding of what slichot and Jewish tradition is all about. It comes forth passionately. And of course, I want to thank really my colleague, Cantor Stephen Freeman, who has led us so beautifully for our slichot service. You know, I got to tell you is that we were talking before, for clergy, there's a lot of tension, no matter the size of the congregation, about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And people describe it as the Super Bowl of the Jewish life, or the World Series. But I got to tell you is that not simply as the rabbi of this congregation, but as being a Jew, I would follow your davening any place. It is really a pleasure. Because as I've shared with other people, I think we all realize, those of us who have come to know and love Cantor Freeman, it comes not simply from here. It comes from here, and it comes here. And once again, I look forward to sharing this pulpit with you for this slichot. And the final thought is that, you know, it's said over here, Al tashlichenu, don't send us away in our old age. And how do you define old age? Well, I got to tell you, when I started out in the rabbinates, and it's 50 years ago this year, 50 years ago, is that we used to do slichot at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when we did it, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were done at about 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. And then I got a little older, and I said, let's move it back. So we moved it back to midnight. We're done around 1:30. And then I got a little older, and I said, let's move it back to 11 o'clock. And you know what happened? I got a little older. And I said, let's move it back to 10:30. And this year, where are we? At 9:45. And so, Cantor, I think next year for slichot, we will start at 5:30 in the afternoon. Okay? Which
Works for me.
Huh?
Works for me.
Yeah, what he said, exactly. I think it works really for all of us. And so, as we're about to conclude our service of slichot and begin in earnest this journey of the high holidays this year, I wish everybody a Shana Tova, a good year and a sweet year. Let it be a healthy year. A healthy year. As we've seen these past days, let it be a safe year. We join the cantor the top of the page, page 15, the Yigdal.
Yigdal Elohim chai ve'yishtabach nimtza ve'nei tel metziyuto echad ve'en yachid ke'ichudo ne'elam ve'gam ein sof le'achduto ein lo demut haguf Aroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon ve'ein reshit lereshito hino adon olam vechol notzar yoreh gedulato Shefa nivuato netano el anshei segulato v'tifarto lo kam beYisrael kemo she'od navi umabit et emunato Torah temet natan Emanu-El ayad nevio ne'eman beito lo yachalif ha'el velo yamir dato le'olamim lezulato sofer v'yodea Sitareinu babit lesof davar bekadmato gomer leish chesed kemifalo noten lerashara kerishato yishlach leketz yamin meshichenu livdot mechakeket Yeshuato meitim yechayel beroch chasto baruch adeyad shem tehilato meitim yechayel beroch chasto baruch adeyad shem tehilato Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imeru amen. Leshana tova tikatevu Leshana tova tikatevu tikatevu vetechatemu Leshana tova tikatevu Leshana tova tikatevu tikatevu
everybody Shana Tova, a good year, and I guess good morning.